The lights of Station Delta's slave market flickered dimly against the crystalline crown of Queen Alta. Her translucent skin caught the light, sending rainbow patterns across the grimy walls. She moved with deliberate grace through the market, her 4 royal guards forming a protective diamond around her. "Your Majesty," wheezed the market owner, a blob-like creature named Gus. "I must say this is an unexpected honor. Had I known you were coming, I would have prepared a more suitable welcome." Alta ignored him. Her 6-fingered hand traced the energy barriers of various holding cells. Each contained exotic specimens from across the galaxy, some with multiple limbs, others with scales that shifted colors, and a few that seemed to be made of living smoke. But none of them caught her interest. "I seek something unique," she said, her voice like chiming crystals. "My collection lacks truly interesting specimens." That's when she saw him. In the furthest cell, a human male stood perfectly still. Unlike the other slaves who cowered or raged, he simply watched. He wore the standard gray prisoner outfit, but somehow made it look like a uniform. His plain features and simple brown hair should have made him forgettable. Yet there was something in his eyes, a calm intelligence that made her guards shift uncomfortably. "Ah, the human," Gus bubbled nervously. "We caught him 3 cycles ago near the outer rim. Surprisingly difficult to capture. Lost 2 ships in the process." Alta moved closer to the cell. The human's eyes met hers directly. A breach of protocol that should have earned him immediate punishment. But she found herself more intrigued than offended. "Does it speak?" she asked. "I speak for myself," the human said before Gus could answer. His voice was deep and steady. "My name is James." One of Alta's guards stepped forward, weapon raised. "You will show proper respect, Toe." Alta raised her hand, stopping the guard. "Fascinating. Most species require translation implants, yet you speak standard perfectly." "Humans are quick learners," James replied with the slightest hint of a smile. Gus nervously floated closer. "Your Majesty, if this specimen is too bold, I have others. The mist dancers of Sector 7 are much more." "How much?" Alta interrupted. "Your Majesty." Her chief advisor, a tall crystalline being named Rod, stepped forward. "Humans are known to be dangerous, unpredictable. The few reports we have suggest they're barely civilized. Their planet isn't even part of the Galactic Council." Alta watched as James raised an eyebrow at this description, but remained silent. Most slaves would have protested or tried to prove their worth. His confidence was unusual. "The price," she repeated to Gus. The blob creature named a sum that made even Alta's advisors gasp. It was enough to buy a small moon. "Done," she said. "Your Majesty," Rod protested, "this is most irregular. We know nothing about human biology. Our containment systems may not." "Then we will learn," Alta cut him off. She turned back to James. "You will be the first human in the Crystal Palace. I trust you understand the honor this represents." James bowed slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to look respectful and slightly mocking at the same time. "I look forward to exceeding your expectations, Your Majesty." As the energy barrier dropped and restraints were placed on James, Alta noticed something odd. Despite being captured, despite being sold, despite facing an unknown future, the human looked pleased. It was almost as if she quickly dismissed the thought. After all, what could a simple slave possibly have to be pleased about? As her royal procession left the market with their new acquisition, none of them noticed the small smile that crossed James's face. Everything was going exactly according to plan. The Crystal Palace's science wing buzzed with unusual activity. 3 days had passed since Queen Alta brought the human to her palace, and her top scientists still couldn't make sense of their findings. Dr. Beam, the head researcher, scratched his crystalline head as he reviewed the latest test results. The human James sat calmly on the examination table, watching the confused scientists with mild amusement. "This makes no sense," Dr. Beam muttered. "Run the endurance test again." James stepped onto the running platform for the 4th time that day. The scientists had expected him to tire after the first few tests. Instead, he maintained a steady pace, barely breaking a sweat. "Remarkable," one assistant noted. "His body actually becomes more efficient the longer he runs. It's as if he's designed for persistent movement." From her private observation chamber above, Queen Alta watched with growing interest. She had collected specimens from 100 worlds, but none quite like this. Most broke within days of arriving at the palace. Either their spirit crumbled, or they raged until they exhausted themselves. But James remained composed, cooperative, yet somehow unbroken. "Your Majesty," Rod, her advisor, spoke softly. "There's something else you should see." He played a recording from the previous night. It showed James in his containment cell, but instead of sleeping, he was exercising. The cameras caught him performing complex movements, something the guards later explained was called martial arts. "He knows we're watching," Rod said. "He's showing us these capabilities on purpose." But why? Below, the scientists moved on to problem-solving tests. They presented James with a complex puzzle box, one that usually took new species several days to solve. They watched in shock as James examined it for 5 minutes, then systematically took it apart. "Perhaps we should try something more challenging," Dr. Beam suggested, trying to hide his surprise. James looked up with that same calm smile. "You could just ask me questions directly. It would save everyone time." The scientists exchanged nervous glances. Test subjects weren't supposed to make suggestions. In her chamber, Alta made a decision. She stood up and walked down to the science wing, her guards rushing to keep up. The scientists bowed as she entered. "Leave us," she commanded. Everyone hurried out except her personal guards. James remained seated on the examination table, but his posture shifted slightly, more alert, more focused. Alta noticed how his eyes quickly scanned the room, noting the positions of her guards, the exits, the potential weapons. He did this all in seconds, so smoothly that she almost missed it. "You're not what you seem," she said. "Neither are you, Your Majesty," James replied. "Your public records show a collector of rare specimens. But I see someone searching for knowledge, for understanding." Alta's crystalline form sparkled with surprise. "You've studied me, just as you're studying me. Though I suspect I've had more success." His tone remained respectful, but there was an edge of challenge in it. "You're supposed to be a primitive species," Alta said, "barely able to achieve spaceflight. How do you know our language, our customs?" James leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps your information about humans is incomplete. Or perhaps—" He paused meaningfully. "It's exactly as complete as we wanted it to be." A tense silence filled the room. The guards gripped their weapons tighter, but Alta raised her hand to stop them. For the first time in centuries, she felt something new. Uncertainty. "What are you?" she asked quietly. "I'm exactly what you see, Your Majesty, a human. The real question is, are you ready to learn what that actually means?" Before Alta could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Rod burst into the room, his crystalline form flickering with panic. "Your Majesty, we have an emergency." As chaos erupted around them, Alta noticed something that sent a chill through her crystalline form. James wasn't surprised by the alarms. In fact, he looked like he had been waiting for them. The grand hall of the Crystal Palace echoed with screams as chaos erupted. Queen Alta stood frozen as masked attackers poured in through multiple entrances. Her guards formed a protective circle around her, their crystal weapons humming with energy. The diplomatic reception had turned into a death trap. Representatives from 12 star systems scattered for cover as plasma bolts lit up the air. The attackers wore stealth suits that bent light around them, making them hard to track. "Protect the Queen," Rod shouted, but 3 of her personal guards already lay shattered on the floor. The attackers had known exactly where to hit crystalline beings to break them. In the confusion, everyone had forgotten about James. He stood in his containment corner, still wearing the silver restraints that supposedly limited his movement. The guards had insisted he attend as a display of the Queen's latest acquisition. Alta saw the nearest attacker raise a weapon, aiming directly at her head. Time seemed to slow down. Her remaining guards were too far away. Rod tried to jump in front of her, but he wouldn't make it in time. Then something impossible happened. James's restraints fell away as if they were made of paper. He moved with shocking speed, crossing the 20 feet between them in what seemed like a single bound. His hand caught the attacker's weapon arm, redirecting it upward. The plasma bolt meant for Alta's head hit the ceiling instead. What? The attacker began, but James was already moving. He turned the attacker's momentum against them, slamming them into the ground with precise force. In one smooth motion, he took their weapon and fired 3 perfect shots, dropping 3 more attackers before they could react. "Get down," James shouted at Alta, his voice carrying natural command. To her own surprise, she obeyed instantly, dropping to the floor as plasma fire crossed where she had been standing. James didn't waste the advantage. He grabbed a decorative crystal spear from the wall, a ceremonial piece never meant for combat, and used it with deadly efficiency. His movements were fluid, each action flowing into the next. He wasn't just fighting. He was controlling the entire battlefield. "The human is loose," one of her guards shouted in panic. "The human is the only reason you're still alive," James replied calmly, disarming another attacker with a sweep of the spear. "Now, either help me protect your queen or get out of my way." The remaining guards looked at Alta, who nodded quickly. They joined James, following his hand signals as if they trained together for years. Under his direction, they herded the attackers into a crossfire. When it was over, 20 attackers lay unconscious or bound on the floor. James stood in the center of the hall, still holding the crystal spear, barely breathing hard. The assembled diplomatic guests emerged from hiding, staring at him with a mixture of fear and awe. "Impossible," Rod whispered. The restraints were rated to hold creatures 3 times stronger than humans. "About that," James said, walking over to help Alta to her feet. "We need to talk about your information on humans. It's severely outdated." Alta looked at the fallen restraints, then at James. "You could have escaped at any time." "Yes, but you stayed." "Yes. Why?" James handed the crystal spear to a nearby guard. "Because this attack wasn't random, Your Majesty. Someone in your court wanted to kill you and blame it on your dangerous new human slave. They didn't expect me to protect you." Alta's crystalline form flickered with realization. "You knew this was coming." "I suspected. It's why I let myself be captured and brought here." He looked around the grand hall, now scattered with unconscious attackers and shocked diplomats. "Though I admit, they moved faster than I expected. We should get you somewhere safe. The ones who planned this won't be happy their first attempt failed." "First attempt?" Rod asked nervously. James smiled grimly. "Think about it. Why would anyone want to kill the Queen today, during a diplomatic reception?" He turned to Alta. "Unless you're ready to hear the full truth about humans, about your empire, and about why I'm really here." Alta looked at her shattered throne, her injured guards, and the human who had saved her life while supposedly being her slave. She straightened her crystalline crown. "Tell me everything." In Queen Alta's secure private chambers, James stood by the window, watching the 3 moons rise over the crystal spires of the palace. The Queen sat at her desk, still processing everything that had happened. Rod nervously paced the room, his crystalline form catching the moonlight. "Your entire understanding of Earth and humans is based on carefully crafted misinformation," James began. "We've been watching your empire for decades, feeding you exactly what we wanted you to see." "Impossible," Rod interrupted. "Our spy networks are the best in the galaxy." James turned from the window with a slight smile. "Are they? Or did they just report what we let them find?" He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared, with thousands of blinking lights representing human outposts and ships. Alta's eyes widened. That's That's not possible. Your species is confined to one solar system. We haven't been confined to Earth for over 200 years, James said quietly. While your empire was busy collecting slaves and specimens, humanity was spreading through the stars. But we did it quietly, carefully. We built hidden colonies, secret shipyards, and cloaked observation posts. He zoomed in on the map, showing detailed surveillance of the Crystal Empire's key installations. We know everything about your empire, its strengths, its weaknesses, and most importantly, its potential. If what you're saying is true, Alta's voice trembled slightly, you could have conquered us at any time. We could have, James agreed. But that's not our way. Not anymore. He sat down across from Alta, his expression serious. Your Majesty, Earth's history is filled with slavery, conquest, and violence. But we learned from our mistakes. We grew beyond them. The hologram shifted to show scenes from Earth's history, ancient slave markets, liberation movements, peaceful protests, and finally, the birth of a unified human civilization. 300 years ago, humans decided that slavery was unacceptable, not just for humans, but for any sentient being. We've spent centuries helping other civilizations reach the same conclusion, quietly, peacefully, from within. Rod stopped pacing. That's why you let yourself be captured. Why you let Queen Alta buy you. James nodded. We knew she was different from her predecessors. We've watched her question the old ways, show compassion where others showed cruelty. She was the perfect catalyst for change. Alta stood up, her crystalline form glowing with emotion. You used me. We gave you an opportunity, James corrected gently. The assassination attempt wasn't our doing. It was organized by those in your empire who fear change. They saw how you treated your specimens with kindness, how you sought knowledge instead of just power. They wanted to eliminate you before you could change too much. But why reveal all this now? Rod asked. Because the Crystal Empire stands at a crossroads, James explained. You can continue down the path of slavery and conquest, facing increasing resistance from hidden human forces and your own people. Or, he paused meaningfully, you can join us in building something better. Alta walked to the window, looking out over her capital city. If I were to believe you, what exactly are you offering? Partnership, James said simply. Earth and its colonies would help you transition away from slave labor. We'd share our technology, our knowledge, our resources. Your empire wouldn't weaken, it would evolve. And if I refuse, then I leave, James shrugged. But the change is coming either way. The only question is whether you'll lead it or be swept aside by it. Suddenly, the chamber's security system chimed. Rod checked the display and his crystalline form paled. Your Majesty, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're unlike anything in our records. James smiled. Right on schedule. Don't worry. They're not here to attack. Consider it a demonstration of good faith. He turned to Alta. Those ships carry diplomatic representatives from Earth and its colonies. They're here to meet the Queen who we believe can transform the Crystal Empire into something extraordinary. Alta looked from the incoming ships to James, then straightened her crown. A new determination shone in her crystalline eyes. Tell me what I need to know, she said, about everything. The attack came at midnight. Explosions rocked the Crystal Palace's lower levels, shattering the peace talks before they could begin. Queen Alta and James found themselves cut off from both the human diplomatic ships above and the loyal palace guards below. The Royal Protection Unit has been compromised. Rod's voice crackled through the emergency communicator. General Stone has launched a coup. He's convinced half the military that you're surrendering the Empire to alien control. The transmission ended with another explosion. James and Alta ran through the dark service corridors of the palace's maintenance level. The backup lighting cast everything in a dim blue glow. The sound of fighting echoed from multiple directions. My people are dying up there, Alta said. Her crystalline form dimmed with worry. And mine can't land to help while the defense systems are active, James replied, checking around a corner. Stone planned this well. He's using your own palace defenses to trap us. They reached a sealed security door. Alta pressed her hand to the crystal lock, but nothing happened. They've locked me out of my own systems, she said in disbelief. James examined the door's control panel. Good thing I spent the last week memorizing your palace layouts. He pulled off the panel cover and started reconnecting crystals in a pattern that shouldn't have been possible for a primitive human to understand. How did you learn our technology so quickly? Alta asked, watching for pursuers. Humans are adaptable. It's what makes us dangerous. The door slid open. It's also what makes us excellent teachers. Speaking of which, he pulled her inside a large maintenance hub filled with control panels. Time for a crash course in human military tactics. Over the next hour, James taught Alta things that went against every rule of crystalline warfare. Her people believed in direct confrontation, in overwhelming force. James showed her how to think differently. In human history, he explained while rewiring another panel, smaller forces have defeated larger ones by being smarter, not stronger. We turn weaknesses into strengths. Like appearing to be a primitive species, Alta asked with new understanding. Exactly. James smiled. Now your palace has maintenance drones for crystal repair, correct? Alta nodded. But they're not weapons. Anything can be a weapon if you're creative enough. James's fingers flew over the controls. And your General Stone is about to learn why humans are considered the galaxy's masters of improvisation. Throughout the palace, maintenance drones activated. Instead of their usual repair patterns, they began moving in coordinated swarms, blocking corridors and disrupting enemy communications. Security systems that Stone's forces thought they controlled started behaving erratically. That's impossible, Alta whispered, watching the chaos on security feeds. The drones shouldn't be able to move like that. Stone studied crystalline warfare, James said, continuing to type. But I doubt he ever studied human swarm tactics from the Great Hive Wars of 2218. A group of Stone's soldiers found themselves trapped between two swarms of repair drones. The drones weren't attacking. They didn't need to. They simply made it impossible for the soldiers to advance or retreat. Your Majesty, James turned to Alta. I can keep them confused, but we need to reach the main control room. You know a way. Alta's crystalline form brightened slightly. The sacred passages. Even Stone wouldn't know about those. She pressed her hand to a seemingly solid wall, revealing a hidden corridor. My ancestors built them for emergencies. Only the royal family knows they exist. Perfect. James gathered their improvised equipment. Lead the way. As they moved through the secret passages, Alta spoke quietly. I understand now why your people chose this way. If you had come with your fleet first, shown your true power, there would have been fear, resistance, probably war. James finished. This way, even with Stone's coup attempt, your people are seeing humans help rather than conquer, seeing you and me work together as equals. They reached another crystal door. Through it, they could hear Stone's forces in the main control room, coordinating their attacks. Ready to show them what human crystalline cooperation looks like? James asked. Alta's form glowed with determination. Teach me more about human tactics. James grinned. Rule 1 of human warfare. Always have a backup plan, and a backup for your backup. The door began to glow as Alta channeled her power into it, while James prepared their surprise for Stone's forces. The coup leaders were about to learn why challenging both humanity and the Crystal Empire was a very, very bad idea. The main control room's door exploded inward in a shower of crystal shards. General Stone and his officers spun around, weapons raised, expecting a frontal assault. Instead, the maintenance drones swarmed in through the ventilation systems, creating a chaotic light show that disoriented the coup forces. Primitive tricks won't save you. Stone shouted into the chaos. His crystalline form pulsed with angry red light. The Empire will not bow to alien influence. James's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, transmitted through the drone network. You know what humans are really good at, General. Learning from history. The drones formed intricate patterns, splitting Stone's forces into smaller groups. And history teaches us that empires built on slavery always fall. Queen Alta emerged from the sacred passage behind Stone's position, her crystal form radiating authority. Stand down, General. That's an order from your queen. A queen who would make us weak. Stone turned his weapon toward her. Who would destroy our way of life. Your way of life. James stepped out from another hidden entrance, unarmed. You mean the enslavement of other species, the suppression of your own people. He walked forward calmly, even as weapons tracked his movement. Tell me, General, how many of your soldiers are actually loyal to you, and how many are here because their families are being threatened? Stone's crystalline face flickered with surprise as several of his officers lowered their weapons. My queen, one officer spoke up. Is it true? About the humans. Alta nodded. They achieved in peace what we failed to do through conquest. They're not here to conquer us. They're here to help us grow. Suddenly, the palace's main view screen activated. Above the capital, the cloaking fields dropped, revealing not just the diplomatic ships, but an entire human fleet. Yet the ships made no aggressive moves. Instead, they were actively protecting the palace from orbital bombardment by Stone's loyalist ships. We could have conquered you decades ago, James said quietly. Instead, we waited, watched, looked for leaders who wanted something better. He nodded to Alta. We found one. Stone raised his weapon higher, crystal fragments falling from his shaking form. You'll destroy everything we built. No, Alta's voice rang with conviction. We'll build something better. Together. She turned to the assembled officers. Look at them. The humans could obliterate us, but they choose to protect us, even from ourselves. They offer partnership, not subjugation. Knowledge, not chains. One by one, Stone's officers lowered their weapons. The general looked around frantically as his support crumbled. The old way is dying, General, James said softly. The only question is, how many more need to die with it? Stone screamed in rage and fired at Alta. James moved with impossible speed, but he didn't have to. The shot dissipated harmlessly against a shield generated by the drone swarm. Another human tactic, James explained as palace guards rushed in to arrest Stone. Always have multiple layers of defense. Throughout the palace, the revolution spread, not with violence, but with understanding. Slaves were freed. Guards laid down arms. The human fleet maintained its protective stance, demonstrating power through restraint. In the control room, Alta accessed the palace's communication system. Her voice carried across the empire. My people, today marks a new chapter in our history. For too long, we built our strength on the weakness of others. No more. Today, we choose a different path, one of cooperation, not conquest. James stood beside her as she spoke, a living symbol of this new alliance. Outside, the first rays of dawn sparkled through the palace's crystal walls, creating rainbows everywhere. The humans teach us that true power lies not in how many we can enslave, but in how many we can lift up. Alta continued. Today, the Crystal Empire chooses to rise, not alone, but together with new allies, new friends. Rod, who had finally reached them, looked at the scene with wonder. Is this how humans always win? Not through force, but through. He struggled for the word. Hope, James supplied. We win through hope and change, and the belief that anyone can choose to be better than they are. As the sun rose fully over the capital, it illuminated not just an empire, but a revolution, one built not on blood and violence, but on understanding and cooperation. The Crystal Empire would never be the same. And that was exactly the point. 6 months after the failed coup, the Crystal Palace looked very different. Where once there were slave quarters, now stood education centers. Former holding cells had been converted into cultural exchange hubs. The specimen collection area had become a grand museum where different species shared their knowledge freely. Queen Alta stood at her favorite balcony, watching ships from a dozen worlds dock at the newly constructed diplomatic port. Her crystalline form glowed with a brightness that reflected the Empire's transformation. "The latest reports, Your Majesty," Rod said, approaching with a data crystal. "The transition exceeds our most optimistic projections. 90% of former slave-dependent industries have successfully converted to automated systems or willing workers." "And the remaining 10%?" Alta asked. "Receiving direct assistance from human engineering teams," James answered, walking onto the balcony. He wore formal diplomatic robes now, the official Earth ambassador to the Crystal Empire. "Though I have to say, your people are learning faster than we expected." Alta smiled. "We had good teachers." She looked down at the city, where crystalline beings and former slaves now walk together as equals. "Though not everyone is happy with the changes." "Change is never easy," James agreed. "But look at what you've accomplished in just 6 months." The data crystal projected statistics into the air. Economic growth was up, civil unrest was down, and applications for citizenship in the Crystal Empire had increased tenfold. Former slave worlds were now trading partners, their unique skills and resources strengthening the Empire in ways conquest never could. "The Galactic Council meets tomorrow," Rod reminded them. "They're voting on the Crystal Empire's petition for membership." "They'll vote yes," James said confidently, "especially after seeing how quickly you've implemented the reforms. You've done in months what took other civilizations years." Alta turned away from the view. "Because we had help." Speaking of which, she picked up another data crystal. "The first batch of crystalline students is ready to begin their education on Earth. And the first human students are eager to learn crystal technology," James added. "Cultural exchange goes both ways." A small alert chimed. The balcony's view screen activated, showing a familiar face. General Stone in his detention cell. The former coup leader had requested an audience. "Are you sure about this?" Rod asked nervously. Alta nodded. "Everyone deserves a chance to change." She activated the communication link. Stone's crystalline form had dulled during his imprisonment, but his eyes were clear. "My queen," he said quietly, I've been watching the changes, reading the reports, and," Alta prompted. "I was wrong," Stone admitted. "The Empire is stronger now, not weaker." "I couldn't see." He paused. "I request permission to help with the transition. My military knowledge could assist in converting our defense forces to peacekeeping roles." James stepped forward. "Everyone has something to teach, General, and something to learn." Alta considered for a moment, then nodded. "Permission granted, under supervision. Show us you can change, like the Empire has changed." After the communication ended, Alta turned to James. "You knew, didn't you? When you let yourself be captured, you knew exactly how this would end." James smiled mysteriously. "We had faith in the possibility. Humans are good at seeing potential, in ourselves and in others." Below them, a group of children caught their attention. Crystalline, human, and other species, all playing together in the palace gardens. They were building something, combining crystal technology with human creativity. "That," James said softly, "is the real revolution. Not the big political changes, but the small personal ones. Every mind opened, every barrier broken, every friendship formed." Alta's form sparkled with emotion. "When I bought a human slave, I thought I was adding to my collection. Instead, you freed an empire," Rod finished. The three of them watched as the sun set over the capital city. Its light caught the crystal buildings and the ships above, creating a dazzling display of colors. But more beautiful than the light show was what it illuminated. A society transforming itself, growing beyond its past, reaching for a better future. "So," James asked with a slight smile, "what shall we change next?" Alta looked at her transformed empire. then at her human friend and advisor. Her answer came easily. Everything. And in that moment, as the stars began to appear above the Crystal Empire, it was clear that the real story wasn't about a queen purchasing a slave. It was about how that simple transaction had changed not just an empire, but the entire galaxy. All because humans knew that true power wasn't in conquering others, but in helping them become their best selves.